I'm Naomi Seyfer. I'm a core dev here at Meteor. And up here I'm going to be giving a Meteor 101 intro to Meteor. You don't have to have ever seen Meteor before. It helps if you've seen JavaScript before a little bit. But even if you haven't seen JavaScript before, if you've programmed before, you should be able to follow along. So the first thing to do to work with Meteor is installing it. I'm going to go through the install process for OS X. It's the same install process for Linux. There is a different install process for Windows. The Windows port is not officially supported, but if you go to win.meteor.com, you can follow the instructions there. But I'm going to be doing the process for OS X. So if you go to docs.meteor.com, I'm going to scroll all the way to the top of this. It gives quick start install instructions. The easiest way to install Meteor on OS X and Linux is to take this line that says curl https, etc. Copy it, go over to terminal.app or any terminal in Linux, paste that in, hit enter. I already have it installed on this computer, so it says updating, but if you're installing for the first time, it will say installing. Great. Let's make an app. The app that I'm going to work with, actually I'm borrowing a little bit from another person who has given Meteor intros named Tarang Patel, who tends to code an app where people in a class can ask questions during the class or towards the end of the class once the app is ready, and the questions will appear in the database of the app all ready to get answered, and then voting on other people's questions, etc. And so the way to create an app is to type Meteor create, and so for me the app we'll just call it questions. Great, it created a directory for me called questions, so let's go there. Take a look around. There are 3 files in here. Actually, there's 3 files plus a hidden directory for Meteor stuff, but mostly just 3 files in here: a CSS file, an HTML file, and a JavaScript file, all named the same thing with the appropriate extensions. So let's open one of those up. So here's the HTML file. So this is the blank app template. It just has a title, and it has a single hello world template. And we'll see what happens when we run it. So to run a Meteor app, you just type Meteor in the directory of the app. And it says running on http://localhost 3000, localhost:3000. So let's just go there in our browser. Make it bigger. It says welcome to questions. It says hello world, welcome to questions, and it has a button. So how that corresponds to our HTML here, this HTML file has a head and a body, and then in the body it says this structure with some braces and an angle bracket and hello. That angle bracket and hello means go find me the hello template and stick whatever is in there right here. The hello template is defined down here with the template tag. Template name equals hello, and it has greeting. So this is actually referring to something in my JavaScript, this greeting thing. And then an input type, an input that's a button that I can click. Let's look at the JavaScript. The JavaScript of this blank template sets template.hello.greeting to the string welcome to questions. Well, you saw that that's the greeting that it printed. So the HTML greeting gets filled in by whatever in JavaScript I set to be my template.hello.greeting. And I set up some events on the button, or this is just a CSS selector for when I click an input element in this template, it will do a console.log. So let's see if that works. Bring up the console, click the button, make the console big enough so that you can see it. It says I pressed the button, success. If I click the button again, it'll say I pressed the button again. So that's boring, just having a blank app. Let's see if we can make this a little bit more interesting. The first of the main Meteor-ish concepts that I want to convey is the fact that Meteor does reactive templating. What does reactive templating mean? It means that when you change something in Meteor, it is immediately reflected in your template. And by change something, I mean certain sources of information that you can change. So Meteor has a concept called a session. And sessions can contain variables. So let's say the greeting is either whatever is in the session for greeting or this welcome to questions string. So to get something from the session, I type session.get greeting, or it's welcome to questions if there's no session variable there. Meteor automatically updates my website. And so from the console, I can actually control this. I can set a session variable using session.set. So I set the session variable greeting to Meteor does some amazing things automatically. And as soon as I hit enter on that in the console, it changes the contents of my template. If you're familiar with web programming, what Meteor is doing behind the scenes is rewriting the DOM to contain the new text where that template helper, this greeting template helper existed. So I can session.set greeting to basically whatever string I want. And it changes immediately. So that's the first of the major concepts in Meteor, is reactive templating. Things change in your website automatically when you change them in your code. You don't have to write specific code to hook that up. The second of the major concepts I want to convey is that you have your database everywhere. You have your database on the server, you have your database in the client. The database that Meteor hooks into is MongoDB. MongoDB is not a standard SQL database, but it's relatively simple to deal with. I'm just going to work with it a little bit in the console here. So I'm going to ignore the rest of this app for now and just work in the console. Because your database is everywhere, your database is on the client, so I can work with the database on the client. So let's just say I want a new collection, a new database collection in the Mongo style. I'm just going to make this one only exists on the client. So to do that, new meteor.collection. So note that because I didn't pass anything to the constructor of my collection, it says creating an anonymous collection which will not be synchronized over the network. Eventually we'll synchronize a collection over the network. All you have to do that is pass a name, but I just want to play with it in my console right now to to show a little bit of what Mongo does for you. So in my collection, I can insert things. You just insert a JSON style document. And insert returns me an ID for the item I just inserted. I could specify the ID if I wanted as an _ID key, but usually I don't need to. I can allow Meteor to specify the ID for me. So I can insert another document that has some similar keys and some different keys. And Mongo is just a document store. It stores whatever JSON style documents you give it. And when you want them back, there are a few methods that you can use to fetch them. Find one is the easiest to use. It will just find you some document that matches the criteria you give it. The simplest criteria you can give it is just a document that it's going to match some keys of. So in this case, let's say I want it to find something that has A is the string world. And it just spits out that object that I just inserted, where A is world, B is 2, and C is 4. If instead you want to find more than one object that fits your criteria, you can do find and find returns you a cursor. There are a few things you can do on a cursor, but the best thing that you can do on a cursor for demonstration purposes is just fetch it, and it'll return you an array of your objects. And here's those two things that are in my database. So that's getting things out of your database with find one, and getting things out of your database with find and then fetch on the cursor that it returns. There's also an update command. We'll encounter that as we're writing the app that we're writing, but I will get to that later. Okay. So let's actually stop using the console right now, or move from the console to actually defining the question app that we want to write. So in our JavaScript, we have two sections. One is some code that's run only on the client, if meteor.isClient, and one that's code that's run just on the server, if meteor.isServer. I could put whatever code I wanted in the server, but I actually am not intending to write much server code right now, so I'll just delete that for now. Much only server code. Let's write some code that is going to run both on the client and on the server. Both on the client and on the server, I want to create a collection. So I'm going to create some global questions collection. And because I'm passing it a name, it will be correctly serialized on the server in a collection of this name called questions. And so when I restart the app, it'll go find the same information it had before. And now this information will get persisted when I put it in. And let's rename the template for a while. or let's make a new template instead of just hello. In my template, I'm going to want some invitation to ask a question. And some form where you can some form where you can ask the question. So we haven't actually called this template in our body yet, so instead of hello, let's do questions. And note that I don't need to do anything to see this change in my browser. All I did was move back to the browser desktop that I have, and it provided the new contents. This form isn't yet hooked up to anything. I can now get rid of this hello template. And so now let's fill in some things that I might need to ask a question. So, or that I might need once I ask a question. Yes?
Is that a variable?
The questions up here is a global variable. No, it's JavaScript syntax is when you don't type var, it is automatically global.
Okay.
And I should note that this is deliberately a global because if I was actually writing this app in multiple files and I wanted to use the questions database from multiple files, I know it's a little bit messy coding-wise, but it's sometimes the expedient thing to define your collections that many different files will use in a global. If I typed var in front of it, it would be local to this file. Yes. I could have done this before I deleted the hello template, and they both would have appeared in order. But I deleted the hello template because I actually don't want it in my final app, and so it's just gone now. So instead of filling in things that I might want for hello, let's fill in some things that I might want for my questions app. For example, I might want my template to be able to access all the questions from my question collection. And for now, let's just return a cursor over all the questions in my questions collection. If you pass no arguments to find, it will just find all of the things in your collection. If you pass no arguments to find one, it will just find one of the things in your collection. Hopefully, whichever one it finds is a good enough one for you. So this should give me a cursor over all questions, and let's associate some event with so let's associate some event with clicking the button. So to the events function on a template, you pass an object that acts as a map from CSS selector to behavior, or event and CSS selector to behavior. So when I click, what did I call it? The question ask button, then I want the behavior. So the arguments to this function are the event and the template. And so the behavior I want is within the template, I want to find the question text. I think that's what I called it. It is. I want to find the question text element in my template. This is, again, just the CSS selector. And it returns you the first of your items in your template that match. And I want to get its value. And let's just insert that into questions. And since let's be ranking our questions in order of votes eventually, so let's just assign it a score for now. A score of 1. Great. So over here in our HTML, so let's do that. Is Meteor working? Ask. Okay, so questions.find1. Oh, hey. I successfully inserted it into my collection. I can see in my console questions.find1 return me the question that I just asked. But it's not displaying on my website yet, so to do that, I'm going to use the templating language that we're using is called handlebars. I'm going to be using a handlebars helper called each. The syntax for that is our familiar 2 braces, and then a pound, and then the particular helper name here. So for each of all questions, and I'm going to close my each helper here. And what do I want to do? I want to maybe put an H3 because I'm lazy and don't want to deal with making text big. And within my H3, I'm going to do the question. And I'm going to put the score. Let's just ask another question and see if it keeps working as we do this. Yep. So that's all I needed to do to get input appearing onto my application. And if, for example, I opened up another browser window, to the same application. This is a completely different Chrome profile, so it's the equivalent of having it open from another computer, except this is localhost. But I can ask a question here. And it appears on both browsers immediately. Question? Yes, of course, right here. All right. So now I have questions appearing. I have scores appearing. I'm getting close to having a working application. In fact, I can go to my terminal and I can type Meteor deploy . All right, now it says now serving at devshop2-class.meteor.com. You can go here right now. You'll get this application. And in fact, if you ask a question, it will appear right here in this window right now. If anyone wants to do this, feel free. Yep, someone asked something. Never tire of this. Because it's the right color. So this is a great little application if we want to just have questions with a score. But notice there's no way to change the score now. To change the score, we need a little bit more of a concept of who's voting, because we don't necessarily want you to be able to vote more than once for a question. You don't want to just like keep clicking an up arrow and keep giving it more and more votes. That wouldn't be quite fair. So to implement voting in a useful way, we're going to have to implement some kind of accounts. Luckily, we're using Meteor. That's easy in Meteor. So in my terminal here, I can do Meteor add. This is to add a package to my Meteor application. So let's add a few packages. Meteor add accounts password. Accounts password, password support for accounts. Meteor add accounts UI. Great. And so now I have a way of adding a login ability to my application. Should I just type right here? Because I added the Accounts UI package. Accounts UI defines me a handlebars helper called login buttons. And so you see in my localhost version of questions, I have some ability to sign in. Well, by the way, if you want to email me, that is my email address. And so I hit the Create Account button, and I am logged in as me. There is. Not all together, but let's say I signed out of here, sign in. I could hit configure Facebook login, and then it gives me this walkthrough for how to register my app on Facebook and get my keys from the Facebook API, and I just deal with Facebook a little bit and then insert my keys into my app ID and keys into here, and then Facebook login will work. I might do this. I might do this later as we finish this example, but so now I'm signed back in using password. So we do have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Weibo, we have several others. I forget them all. Basically, so you can decide how you want people to be allowed to log in. You, the app writer, should decide how people can log into your app. And it's relatively easy to add these new packages. You see that it was just like add accounts Facebook to incorporate Facebook login. So let's say that along with the question and the score, I want to keep in my database a concept of who voted for the question and who asked the question, what's their email address. So let's take a look at when I'm logged in, meteor.user is actually a function I need to call. Returns me the object that's my representation of my user in Meteor land. So let's look at what it looks like. Okay, here's my ID. And I have an array of emails with one element, which is my address. So over in my app, let's just write a function for getting the email address. And that's under the address key. Great. So that will return me my current user's email address. And let's insert that into the database when I add another thing to the database. So email this is getting to the point that I wanted on multiple lines. Score 1, email, get current email, and votes. Let's make that an array of people who voted on it. So right now, the only person who's considered to vote on it is the person who asked the question, meteor.user ID. Great. So let's see if this works. Let's go to my HTML and then put in the email. Oh, yep. It correctly got my email address from my user record and inserted that right after the score. I'll actually perhaps want that out of the H3, maybe. having it in a paragraph style rather than, yeah, that's a little bit better, a little bit less emphasized. I'm not focusing on CSS here. I could be editing my questions.css file just as live as I'm editing the HTML and the JavaScript. But I'm not really focused on CSS right now while I'm just trying to get the flow of my app right. So one thing that you might notice is you can currently ask a question if you're not logged in. Let's make it so that you can't. So this will only return something that's true-ish if I'm logged in. And so I can go to my HTML and say, if I'm logged in, but I always want to display whatever questions are asked, but I only want to display the ability to ask a question if I'm logged in. So right now it's still displaying the ask a question. Let's sign out. Well, now I can't ask a question unless I sign in again. All right, I can ask a question again. And so now the user will always be reported with the question I'm asking. Let's talk about voting. To vote, I want to give you some ability to vote on questions. Let's just make it an up arrow for now. So now each one has an up arrow next to it. But actually, I want to say it only has an up arrow if your user ID isn't in the set of user IDs on that question. So let's say if show arrow and in my JavaScript I want to write whatever show arrow is, template.questions.show arrow, this function, return underscore. Underscore is just a library in JavaScript that provides a lot of helper functions for you. So underscore.contains. So now the question is, where is the database thing that I'm dealing with right now? You see, I use this show arrow inside an each. Each sets the data context to, it sets this inside my function, the JavaScript this keyword, to be whatever I'm iterating over in the each. So in this case, this is the question object in my database. So this dot votes, and I want to know if it contains meteor.user ID. I actually want to know if it doesn't contain meteor.user ID. Oh, I see. Most of these don't have that in there yet. I know that's not a question, but now that I've implemented the code to insert whoever asked the question into a votes array on the question itself, that particular question doesn't show an arrow. The arrow does nothing yet. Let's make the arrow do something. What should the arrow do? Over here in our events, let's say what happens when we click an arrow. When you click some vote thing, well, this is still the data context of the each that we're in, so it will be the thing that we're voting on. So the question that we're voting on is this ._ID. That's the ID of the question that we're voting on. And I want to update that in questions. Update this .ID with what? I want some modification to it that adds 1 to the score and adds my user ID to the set of votes on the question. So in Mongo, there are some special keys in your modifiers is what you put in this object. There are some special keys that you can use. For example, you can increment. And what do I want to increment? I want to increment score by 1. And I want to add to set votes and one thing I forgot is I, in fact, only want to show the arrow if you're logged in. Great. So now when you click vote, it should add something to the votes array and increment the score. Okay. There are lots of questions in my database that don't have any votes array and don't have any owner or anything, but I should be okay just logging out. Let's make a new account. So now I'm logged in as nobody@example.com instead. This one should not show an arrow, actually does show an arrow, but when I click on the arrow, the score goes up to 2 and the arrow disappears because nobody@example.com got added to the list of people who voted for it. I could bump these all day. So those are the questions that I voted for as nobody, and I can log back in as myself. And see a different set of arrows based on who owns the questions and who has voted. Great. There's a problem here. All the questions, the first question on my list has a score of 1, but there are questions with a score of 2 that are below me. Actually, let's fix that. So instead of just questions.find, I'm going to do questions.find with an empty selector, meaning all of them still. But I want to give the option here to sort by let's sort by score decreasing. So now I'm sorting by score decreasing. All the questions with more votes are at the top. Let's just show off a little bit of packages again. This adds the Twitter Bootstrap library. I didn't like that serif font anyway. Now I've added Bootstrap, and so all my fonts are different. It added all the Bootstrap CSS and JavaScript library to my application. And you can see that I can do, in the HTML, I could do something like I think it's form compact. Not sure I fully remember all the stuff. And to make this a Bootstrap button, sure. I think we are ready to because accounts password and accounts UI depend on it. Mm-hmm. You can now totally ask questions on devshop2class.meteor.com, where I see that you figured out that you can in fact insert whatever you want from the console right now. We have not talked about allow and deny rules yet. I can cover that in a second. SQL injection attacks don't work against MongoDB. And because of the way this works, it inserts as a string. It's not actually, it inserts the string value. It's not actually filling it into some SQL command, so that wouldn't work anyway. And the 9000 and 9001, I definitely see that you are able to mess around with the database however you want from the console. Let's talk about that. So let's see what packages I have in my application right now. So there's a file that lists all of the packages that I've imported. So I've got some packages that I added myself, like accounts-password, accounts UI, accounts Facebook, and Bootstrap. But you also see these two packages that I didn't add myself, that are by default included in your basic first Meteor app when you just get started. They're great for development. They're great for prototyping because it means I don't have to think about a lot of things. But they're bad for an actual deployment app. As you could see, you could insert whatever you wanted from the console. To keep you from doing that, let's do Meteor remove insecure. The insecure package is what allowed me to just ask questions. You can see that now if I attempt to ask a question, it won't work. It'll briefly flash it on my screen, but it won't write through to the server. The flash you see, by the way, corresponds to the fact that Meteor can predict the result of an insert on the server before it gets to the server, and it will attempt to display whatever the result of an insert or the result of any other method call is before the server gets back with the result to you. When the server gets back with the result, it'll reconcile what it did locally and what the server did, and display the eventual totality of what happened. So you see my question appear briefly when I click the ask button, but disappear as the server is like, no, not allowed because you removed insecure package. So to actually allow things, I'm going to have to write some more JavaScript. Let's go back to my my if meteor.is server. And because I always forget the syntax of this, I'm going to go to the documentation, docs.meteor.com, use it well. So we can define ourselves some allow and deny rules on our collections. So questions dot allow, and let's define what I'm going to allow to change my question. Here's the docs on allow. What you get is some callbacks for insert, update, and remove that get the user ID in the document, and for update you get the field names that are trying to be modified and the modifier itself. So let's say to allow insert, the user ID in the document. What has to be true about my document? So first of all, I want doc.votes or underscore dot is equal doc.votes. And so if the votes on the document is not equal to a list of the current user ID, then bad. If if email so if either the email or the question doesn't exist or is empty, I want to return false. And finally, if score is not 1, I also want to return false. I could probably think of more rules here, but you get the idea. So this allows me to define rules about what can be inserted. And if I did this well, I can go to my questions app, and ask the question, and it in fact does correctly insert it this time because I've made an allow rule for my collection. But my voting is not going to work. Or maybe it did work, but maybe it shouldn't have. Yes, the voting says update failed, access denied. So another question, I can keep hitting this up arrow next to it as much as I want, and it'll just say update failed. So what are the qualities of an update that I want? Well, I can add an allow rule for update. And those take user ID, doc, field names, and modifier. And a comma here. And the important thing about the update is that I want to say I'm only allowing one possible modifier on this update. So the modifier has to be equal to increment increment score of 1, and it's basically the modifier that I defined above. And add to set. So now it'll allow some update if my modifier is the exact modifier that I wanted. So now let's see if voting works. Seems to. But if I tried to do questions.update let's grab this ID. Questions.update this ID and increment score by 3000. Oh no, that worked. Oh, I totally screwed up and returned that. Ah, I see, I forgot to close this. Let's go fix that question. It is good that I failed to do this because it allows me to tell you about how you can actually just access your database from the server side with full permissions. If you just type Meteor Mongo, you get a Mongo shell on your database. So you can do db dot and then your database, your collection name, and you can do find, you can do all the things you're used to, but let's do find one of that thing that I messed up. I want ID underscore ID is this. There we go. Huh. It briefly showed the 3000. Yes, now it shows up access denied when I try and do that. I actually don't know why. In any case, it now denies my access when I try and do increment to 3000, but I can still click the button and it will update my. That's about all I have prepared on Intro to Meteor right now. We've made an entire app. We've deployed it. Let me actually redeploy it so that you can't add arbitrary objects anymore. So questions were either, yes. Yeah. So let's go to questions.css. There we go. Ah, I see.
But it was good to see that too.
I don't actually like white on black that much. Let's go back. I believe there is something that you can access in handlebars that will give you the number of where you are in each, but I forget exactly what. You can think, let's see. Let's try this. In the HTML, let's do and the questions application. Oh no. I guess this may not. So yeah, apparently that is a handlebars feature that we don't have yet. However, you could do something along the sort of all questions. We could do a fetch. We could do a _.map with this fetch. let's see if this works. So now I've written code to insert an index on every element of this find that I'm getting using _.map, another helper function that underscore gives me. And now in my HTML, let's see if I can do yep. Perhaps not the most elegant solution ever, but it happened. Yeah, Bootstrap will gladly do that table formatting for you. I think there are also selectors for even rows and odd rows of CSS selectors that some browsers implement for even rows and odd rows of tables. CSS is not my strongest point. Yes.
So you've got.
There's the localhost one and the one that is deployed, which.
Server state. What are the like deployed? What are like?
The code that is you can pass the function meteor.startup to when meteor.startup runs on the server, it will run when your application is starting up. You can pass an argument to Meteor Mongo that will allow you to manually insert stuff in a Mongo database of a deployed application using Meteor Deploy.
So wait, so you could use the server.
Haven't done it, but probably.
Yeah. Okay.
You can do Meteor with a -- settings option, which allows you to specify something that will appear in the variable meteor.settings when you're running your app. And that's useful for like certain deployment settings. Yeah, there are a variety of ways. You can write arbitrary server code that can get your information from wherever you want it.
If they're working on
My understanding is that it varies. I know that we've gotten database dumps from people. I think you can actually find some in-file system database dumps from Mongo if you look. Again, I don't know fully exactly.
things to put in the initialization code.
Common thing that we have in the example code is in the server-side startup. If the database is empty, in other words, if find1 returns you nothing, then insert some basic stuff in. But if the database isn't empty, just go with whatever's in the database already.
So in this case,
Here's the on the file system where the database is. There's no easy way that I know of to just specify an entire database that you want to upload to Meteor's deployment servers. If you're deploying yourself, you can certainly do that. Meteor bundle is a command that that bundles up your application for deployment. And now I have questions.tar.gz, and if I so here's my application bundle. And the README of it tells you how to use it. It packages all its necessary dependencies along with it, except for Node and fibers. You need to run Node 0.8.18, I think, is the version of Node we're using right now. Any more questions on... I should hope this app is working right here. Yeah, it is working. So you can ask there, or you can ask... Yes? Yeah. I can do that.
Does Meteor take any email? You know.
So Meteor... Meteor Bundle minifies it for you by default to start with. So you can see in my bundle I have app.html, etc. Actually, maybe it didn't minify it. The serving it will minify it. But so in app we get our questions.js, and we have a main.js that starts it serving for you. If you want to just give someone else your app and you don't want it in Git, you can just tar it up yourself or zip it up using whatever you want for development. But I would suggest using version control. Version control is in create a new repository. Actually, let's just post this as a gist. Questions.js. Great. Is that so? Oh, someone.
Yes.
So clearly my my deny rule didn't work. So let's check this. Let's check this locally. So that did an access denied. Can I ask how someone did the many upvotes one? What?
Unsurprising.
I'm so not surprised, Uran. What?
Meteor Mongo server side.
Ah, yes. The way that worked was I deployed the application without a password. Don't do that. So over here in my thing where I've been deploying it, Meteor deploy Devshop 2 class. Notice that there wasn't any password that it even asked for. Let's, instead of that, Meteor deploy -d Devshop 2 class. So it's deleted, and with a password. Meteor help deploy dash. Oh, I need to. I wasn't in the right directions. Directory. All right, now it should be deployed again in 1 second. What? Really?
So you
Yeah. Passwords should never show on your screen. Right. Because I deleted it and because I deleted it and recreated it, the database is now gone and refreshed, but now I believe Uran won't be able to do that again. Unless Uran is reading my mind about the password, or unless I screwed up the update rules, which Uran will tell me very soon if I did, I'm sure. Any more questions? All he had to do is type Meteor Mongo and Devshop 2-class, because it tries to connect to whatever it is. So the lesson here is only deploy without a password if you're playing. Don't deploy without a password for real. All right, I'm done here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.